put in place a consistent, powerful, and maintainable test system. Everybody's so focused on testing that needs to be done on this sprint, they're not necessarily thinking about one in the long term, particularly from an automated regression test point of view. What do we need here? Now, these advantages, disadvantages are not inherent in Agile, and as I mentioned before, some of these things are definitely in the quote-unquote "that's not Agile" situation category. But we do see a number of Agile practices that have accentuated these problems, and there are challenges to be managed. So how do we deal with them? Well, the test manager of a truly independent test team will have to introduce centripetal centralizing forces to bind the team together and to make its actions consistent. And this will balance out the sprint-specific centrifugal or outward-pushing forces. Making sure that there's sufficient time set aside for people to communicate with each other about what they're doing, read each other's bug reports, have regular discussions about what's being covered and what's not, and so forth. There needs to be as I said, a centralizing type of force to balance out the diffusing forces that will arise from the sprint silos. Now, here comes Agile heresy of the highest order, but it is something that we have seen some of our clients try, and something that we think can work if done appropriately, and this is the separate test sprint after the development sprint. Now, again, I can hear the Agile purists howling, even with your phones muted, but as I said at the outset, my objective here is to help clients play the hand they're dealt, not necessarily to observe the pure Agile, if you will. Now, if the sprint silo problems, other disadvantages that can come about because of the sprint silo and can be dealt with without violating the rules of Agile, I'm all for it. But the important thing is that the independent test team, which is, as we've seen it through our assessments, the most effective defect-finding instrument that any organization typically has, needs to be preserved, and those capabilities need to be defended. So by whatever means necessary, you need to preserve that you have an effective independent test team. Now, if you do go this separate test sprint approach and adopt the Agile heresy that I've just spouted off here, make sure that you remain engaged as a test manager or tester in the development sprint, because otherwise you're just exchanging one set of blind spots for another set of blind spots. And in fact, what you'd be doing is going back to the worst practice of the waterfall model, where code just comes flying over the fence to you at the end of some sort of completely opaque development period, and you have no idea what it does or how to deal with it. So you do want to remain engaged in the development sprint, following the usual rules of the Agile methodologies, but then having perhaps the separate test sprint at the end if you need it. Now, another challenge here, and this is sort of a philosophical or I don't know, sociological, I think is maybe the better word, challenge, is related to a concept put forward by the analyst company Gartner. And you can go out to their website, I think it's Gartner.com, to take a look at this. Do a search for hype cycle on Gartner's website. The hype cycle is something that Gartner, as analysts, have observed very commonly in technology in general. They say that the new ideas and new technologies go through this hype cycle, and the hype cycle consists of 5 pieces, if you will, 5 stages. Now, the technology trigger, this is where the idea generates a lot of press and a lot of interest. And those of you who follow software engineering and IT, remember, oh yeah, I first started hearing about that Agile stuff in 1999, 2000, 2001, right? So that was kind of the technology trigger point. And then what has happened over the last few years is that you're moving into the next stage of the hype cycle, which is the peak of inflated expectations. And this is where Gartner says you have a frenzy of publicity that generates a lot of enthusiasm and unrealistic expectations, and there tend to be a lot of consultants pushing the idea of this hyped concept. And this of course, is pretty well known. I mean, there's a book called Fad Surfing in the Boardroom that came out in the mid-'90s that talked about exactly this kind of thing, and crosses many industries. There's a famous Dilbert cartoon strip where the Catbert, as a consultant, is telling the pointy-haired boss about some hot new idea, and pointy-haired boss says, hey, aren't you the same guy who came in here and gave me total quality management? And the cat says, I swear to you that all the terms now are different. And the boss then says, well, how much do you want the check for? And so we've sort of entered that kind of phase. Now, of course, the Dilbert cartoon is a joke, and so for those of you who are involved in Agile, don't take that too seriously or personally. But there certainly is, I think, a lot of high expectations, a lot of we've seen this with our clients, overly enthusiastic attitude. And as a tester and test manager and test consultant, I consider myself something of a professional pessimist and professional skeptic. So I always take claims of great leaps forward with a grain of salt. And the next stage of the hype cycle is this trough of disillusionment they talk about. And failure to meet the expectations makes the technique unfashionable. I think having a healthy dose of skepticism and trying to manage the challenges, testing challenges and other challenges of Agile are actually going to help minimize the depth of the trough of disillusionment if we do that. I think buying into all of the claims only heightens the peak of the inflated expectations and thus deepens the trough of disillusionment. Now, what comes after that are the slopes of enlightenment and the plateau of productivity, which is where organizations have actually fully digested, if you will, the technology and how to use it effectively. And that seems to be some way off now at this point. I mean, certainly not seeing the trough of disillusionment yet. So we really can't expect that we will reach that plateau of productivity anytime in the next certainly 3 or 4 years. I mean, I think we're probably looking at a much longer 5 to 10 year period. Now, what does this all mean to you? You can say, look, expectations. I don't care. I do my job. You do need to manage these expectations, and as a test team on an Agile project, it is quite possible that you will be reporting things to management like, well, the quality isn't really any higher now than when we were doing traditional life cycles, or maybe it's even lower. Now, I know that there are a lot of anecdotal reports out there about substantially higher quality from Agile life cycles, and I've talked to some consultants and colleagues that I respect very much who say they are seeing that. But we've also seen with other clients that there actually is lower quality than they would have gotten with the more traditional approach. Another thing that you would be perhaps communicating to management would be some of the challenges that I've mentioned in this presentation, and particularly the issue of unlimited and potentially unmanaged change. I think this is the biggest cookie jar, if you will, from a management point of view and a business point of view is, oh, we can change anything anytime we want. At least that's the expectation. And if you start saying, well, we can't really deal with that, we need more control over there, control over these other challenges, and maybe the quality isn't what we thought it was going to be. These kind of things